Something freaks me the fuck out about it. This is now as good a time as any to shave though. Oh, I don't have that one. See what Krishna says, Krishnamurti. The problems of the world are so colossal. This is chapter 4, by the way, self-knowledge. Self-knowledge. Self-knowledge, dummy. The problems of the world are so colossal, so very complex, that to understand and to resolve them, one must approach them in a very simple and direct manner. And simplicity, directness, do not depend on outward circumstances. Chapter 4, Self-Knowledge. The problems of the world are so colossal, so very complex, that to understand and to resolve them, one must approach them in a very simple and direct manner. And simplicity, directness, do not depend on outward circumstances, nor on our particular prejudices and moods. As I was pointing out, the solution is not to be found through conferences, blueprints, or through the substitution of new leaders for old, and so on. The solution obviously lies in the creator of the problem, in the creator of the mischief, of the hate, and of the enormous misunderstandings that exist between human beings. The creator of this mischief, the creator of these problems, is the individual, you and I, not the world as we think of it. The world is your relationship with another. The world is not something separate from you and me. The world, society, is the relationship that we establish or seek to establish between each other. So you and I are the problem, and not the world, because the world is the projection of ourselves, and to understand the world, we must understand ourselves. The world is not separate from us. We are the world, and our problems are the world's problems. This cannot be repeated too often, because we are so sluggish in our mentality that we think the world's problems are not our business, that they have to be resolved by the United Nations or by substituting new leaders for the old. It is a very dull mentality that thinks like that, because we are responsible for this frightful misery and confusion in the world. No shit. This ever-impending war. To transform the world, we must begin with ourselves. And what is important in beginning with ourselves is the intention. The intention must be to understand ourselves, and not to leave it to others to transform themselves, or to bring about a modified change through revolution. Relatable today, huh? Either of the left or of the right. It is important to understand that this is our responsibility, yours and mine, because however small may be the world we live in, if we can transform ourselves, bring about a radically different point of view in our daily existence, then perhaps we shall affect the world at large, the extended relationship with others. As I said, we are going to try and find out the process of understanding ourselves, which is not an isolating process. It is not withdrawal from the world, because you cannot live in isolation. To be is to be related, and there is no such thing as living in isolation. It is the lack of right relationship that brings about conflicts, misery, and strife. However small our world may be, if we can transform our relationship in that narrow world, it will be like a wave extending outward all the time. I think it is important to see that point, that the world is our relationship, however narrow, and if we can bring a transformation there, not a superficial, but a radical transformation, then we shall begin actively to transform the world. Real revolution is not according to any particular pattern, either of the left or of the right, but it is a revolution of values, a revolution from sensate values to the values that are not sensate or created by environmental influences. To find these true values which will bring about a radical revolution, a transformation or a regeneration, it is essential to understand oneself. Self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, and therefore the beginning of transformation or regeneration. To understand oneself, there must be the intention to understand, and that is where our difficulty comes in. Although most of us are discontented, we desire to bring about a sudden change. Our discontent is canalized merely to achieve a certain result. Being discontented, we either seek a different job or merely succumb to environment. Discontent, instead of setting us aflame, causing us to question life, the whole process of existence, is canalized. Am I saying that right? Canalized? 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 I don't know. I never read it. Thereby we become mediocre, losing that drive, that intensity to find out the whole significance of existence. Therefore, it is important to discover these things for ourselves. Because self-knowledge cannot be given to us by another, it is not to be found through any book. We must discover, and to discover there must be the intention, the search, the inquiry. So long as that intention to find out, to inquire deeply, is weak or does not exist, mere assertion or a casual wish to find out about oneself is of very little significance. Thus, the transformation of the world is brought about by the transformation of oneself. Be the change you wish to see, right? Fucking Gandhi. Because the self is the product and a part of the total process of human existence. To transform oneself, self-knowledge is essential. Without knowing what you are, there is no basis for right thought. And without knowing yourself, there cannot be transformation. One must know oneself as one is, not as one wishes to be, which is merely an ideal and therefore fictitious, unreal. It is only that which is that can be transformed, not that which you wish to be. To know oneself as one is requires an extraordinary alertness of mind, because what is constantly undergoing transformation, change, and to follow it swiftly, the mind must not be tethered to any particular dogma or belief. To any particular pattern of action. If you would follow anything, it is no good being tethered. To know yourself, there must be the awareness, the alertness of mind, in which there is freedom from all beliefs, from all idealization, because beliefs and ideals only give you a color, perverting true perception. If you want to know what you are, you cannot imagine or have belief in something which you are not. If I am greedy, envious, violent, merely having an ideal of non-violence, of non-greed, is of little value. But to know that one is greedy or violent, to know and understand it, requires an extraordinary perception, does it not? It demands honesty, clarity of thought, whereas to pursue an ideal away from what is an escape. It prevents you from discovering and acting directly upon what you are. The understanding of what you are, whatever it be, ugly or beautiful, wicked or mischievous, the understanding of what you are without distortion is the beginning of virtue. Virtue is essential, for it gives freedom. It is only in virtue that you can discover that you can live, not in the cultivation of virtue, which merely brings about respectability, not understanding and freedom. There is a difference between being virtuous and becoming virtuous. Being virtuous comes through the understanding of what is, whereas becoming virtuous is postponement, the covering up of what is with what you would like to be. Therefore, in becoming virtuous, you are avoiding action directly upon what is. The process of avoiding what is through the cultivation of the ideal is considered virtuous. But if you look at it closely and directly, you will see that it is nothing of the kind. It is merely a postponement of coming face to face with what is. Virtue is not the becoming of what is not. Virtue is the understanding of what is, and therefore freedom from what is. Virtue is essential in a society that is rapidly disintegrating. In order to create a new world, a new structure away from the old, there must be freedom to discover. And to be free, there must be virtue, for without virtue there is no freedom. Can the immoral man, who is striving to become virtuous, ever know virtue? and the immoral man who is striving to become virtuous ever know virtue. The man who is not moral can never be free, and therefore he can never find out what reality is. Reality can be found only in understanding what is, and to understand what is, there must be freedom. Freedom from the fear of what is. To understand that process, there must be the intention to know what is, to follow every thought, feeling, and action. And to understand what is extremely difficult, because what is never still, never static. It is always in movement. And they're saying we have a change shortage right now. The what is what you are, not what you would like to be. It is not the ideal, because the ideal is fictitious, but it is actually what you are doing, thinking, and feeling from moment to moment. What is the actual, and to understand the actual requires awareness, a very alert, swift mind. But if we begin to condemn what is, if we begin to blame or resist it, then we shall not understand its movement. If I want to understand somebody, I cannot condemn him. I must observe, study him. I must love the very thing I am studying. If you want to understand a child, you must understand, not condemn him. You must play with him, watch his movements, his idiosyncrasies, his ways of behavior. But if you merely condemn, resist, or blame him, there is no comprehension of the child. Similarly, to understand what is, one must observe what one thinks, feels, and does from moment to moment. That is the actual. Any other action, any ideal or ideological action, is not the actual. It is merely a wish, a fictitious desire to be something other than what is. To understand what is requires a state of mind in which there is no identification or condemnation, which means a mind that is alert and yet passive. We are in that state when we really desire to understand something. When the intensity of interest is there, that state of mind comes into being. When one is interested in understanding what is, the actual state of mind, one does not need to force, discipline, or control it. On the contrary, there's passive alertness, watchfulness. The state of awareness comes when there's interest, the intention to understand. So this could kind of be a thing I do, huh? Just kind of float and read. Kind of cool. The fundamental understanding of oneself does not come through knowledge or through the accumulation of experiences, which is merely the cultivation of memory. The understanding of oneself is from moment to moment. If we merely accumulate knowledge of the self, that very knowledge prevents further understanding, because accumulated knowledge and experience becomes the center through which thought focuses and has its being. The world is not different from us and our activities, because it is what we are, which creates the problems of the world. The difficulty with the majority of us is that we do not know ourselves directly, but seek a system, a method, a means of operation by which to solve the many human problems. I never have, though. Like I read this shit and it's like, wow, what the fuck? Why have I just never bought into anything? And I'm just like naturally so inclined to just go my own way and like look into things, read things, and like learn about things for sure, but not like attached to them. Not be like, yeah, I'm Christian, or I'm Buddhist, or I'm, this is what I believe because it's like I read it. But it's like, no, like, I mean, I see what it has value. I see the value in it, but it's like I'm not that. I'm not going that way. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a fucking, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's weird. People jump onto this shit and like they just cling to it like it's their way, and it's like that was kind of one of the things that bothered me, about my grandmother always being like, you need to find God. And like, I know God, like I don't, you're judging my relationship with him, it's like just because I say Hail Satan or don't go to church doesn't mean I don't have a relationship with God as I understand him, right? I don't know, whatever. Now, is there a means, a system of knowing oneself? Any clever person, any philosopher can invent a system, a method, but surely the following of a system will merely produce a result created by the system, will it not? If I follow a particular method of knowing myself, then I shall have the result which the system necessitates. But the result will obviously not be the understanding of myself. That is by following a method, a system, a means through which to know myself, I shape my thinking, my activities according to a pattern. But the following of a pattern is not the understanding of oneself. Therefore, there is no method for self-knowledge. Seeking method invariably implies the desire to obtain some result, and that is what we all want. We follow authority, if not that of a person, then of a system, of an ideology, because we want a result which will be satisfactory, which will give us security. We really do not want to understand ourselves, our impulses, our reactions, the whole process of our thinking, conscious as well as the unconscious. We would rather pursue a system which assures us of a result. But the pursuit of a system is invariably the outcome of our desire for security, for certainty, and the result is obviously not the understanding of oneself. When we follow a method, we must have authorities, the teacher, the guru, the savior, the master, who will guarantee us what we desire, and surely that is not the way of self-knowledge. Authority prevents the understanding of oneself, does it not? Under the shelter of an authority, a guide, you may have temporarily a sense of security, a sense of well-being, but that is not the understanding of the total process of oneself. Authority, in its very nature, prevents the full awareness of oneself, and therefore ultimately destroys freedom. In freedom alone can there be creativeness. There can be creativeness only through self-knowledge. Most of us are not creative. We are repetitive machines, mere gramophone records, playing over and over again certain songs of experience, certain conclusions and memories, either of our own experience, or those of another. Such repetition is not creative being, but it is what we want, because we want to be inwardly secure. We are constantly seeking methods and means for this security, and thereby we create authority, the worship of another, which destroys comprehension. Oh boy, that one was next to me. Which destroys comprehension. That spontaneous tranquility of mind in which alone there can be a state of creativeness. Surely our difficulty is that most of us have lost this sense of creativeness. To be creative does not mean that we must paint pictures or write poems or become famous. That is not creativeness. It is merely the capacity to express an idea which the public applauds or disregards. Capacity and creativeness should not be confused. Capacity is not creativeness. Creativeness is quite a different state of being, is it not? It is a state in which the self is absent, in which the mind is no longer a focus of our experience. The mind is no longer a focus of our experiences, our ambitions, our pursuits, and our desires. Creativeness is not a continuous state. It is new from moment to moment. It is a movement in which there is not the me, the mine, in which the thought is not focused on any particular experience, ambition, achievement, purpose, and motive. It is only when the self is not that there is creativeness. That state of being in which alone there can be reality, the creator of all things. But that state cannot be conceived or imagined. It cannot be formulated or copied. It cannot be attained through any system, through any philosophy, through any discipline. On the contrary, It comes into being only through understanding the total process of oneself. The understanding of oneself is not a result, a culmination. It is seeing oneself from moment to moment. The understanding of oneself is not a result, a culmination. It is seeing oneself from moment to moment in the mirror of relationship. One's relationship to property, to things, to people, and to ideas. But we find it difficult to be alert, to be aware. And we prefer to dull our minds by following a method, by accepting authorities, superstitions, and gratifying theories, so our minds become weary, exhausted, and insensitive. Such a mind cannot be in a state of creativeness. That state of creativeness comes only when the self, which is the process of recognition and accumulation, ceases to be. Because after all, consciousness is the me, or as the me, is the center of recognition, and recognition is merely the process of accumulation of experience. But we are all afraid to be nothing, because we all want to be something. The little man wants to be a big man, the unvirtuous wants to be virtuous, the weak and obscure crave power, position, and authority. That is the incessant activity of the mind. Such a mind cannot be quiet, and therefore can never understand the state of creativeness. In order to transform the world about us, with its misery, wars, unemployment, starvation, class divisions, and utter confusion, there must be a transformation in ourselves. The revolution must begin within oneself, but not according to any belief or ideology, because revolution based on an idea or in conformity to a particular pattern is obviously no revolution at all. To bring about a fundamental revolution in oneself, one must understand the whole process of one's thought and feeling and relationship. That is the only solution to all our problems. Not to have more disciplines, more beliefs, more ideologies, and more teachers. If we cannot understand ourselves as we are from moment to moment, without the process of accumulation, then we shall see how there comes a tranquility that is not the product of the mind. If we can understand ourselves as we are from moment to moment, without the process of accumulation, then we shall see how there comes a tranquility that is not a product of the mind, a tranquility that is neither imagined nor cultivated, and only in that state of tranquility can there be creativeness. And I'm feeling pretty tranquil here on the water right now. So I think this might be my thing for a little while. I'm gonna read, starting off with this book, The First and Last Freedom by Krishnamurti. That was chapter 4, Self-Knowledge. And I'm going to have to go back and read the other chapters, record the other chapters. There it is. A book in a kayak. Or, I don't know. We'll figure something out maybe. Used book, $149. Probably one of the best books I've read. The truth is a pathless land. If the truth can set us free, where do we find it? According to Krishnamurti, we find the truth not in society and its institutions, nor in organized religions and their dogmas, nor in any self-help guru or outside spiritual authority. The hope for truth and ultimate freedom can't come from someone telling you what to do or not, or what to do or to believe. It can only come through our own creative self-understanding. In the first and last freedom, Krishnamurti takes the reader on a wide-ranging quest, exploring society's common concerns, such as suffering and fear, love and sex, the meaning of life, and personal transformation, always relating them to the essential search for pure truth and perfect freedom. I'm going to go float around a little more, maybe see how that sounded, and then maybe start with the introduction or the foreword by Aldous Huxley.